That's my lava lamp. The bulb's gone out, so I couldn't possibly do any work. I got some questions about a modern vocal chain. Why don't we answer those instead? Hey, I'm Steve and I'm a multi-platinum producer engineer. If you're an artist, a producer, or a creative engineer and you're putting yourself out there by putting material out into the world, I've got nothing but respect for you. I got 3 questions about a modern vocal channel strip in Logic with stock plugins. Let's look. I got some notes here. Let me just explain what we're going to be addressing. Mickey Fresh asked if we could discuss a modern vocal chain using stock plugins for a vocal over 2-track. I'm not working with a 2-track today, but hopefully the vocal chain makes some sense for you. Sir Charlie McFly was asking about how do I get sizzle on a vocal. This isn't the vocal that you're referring to, but the principle is the same. And Stephen Peacock asked about the Distortion plugin on this chain from another video. I'll put a link up here. And he also asked why I have the CLA vocal on the end of it and why I'm not using the effects in that, or why I wouldn't. So let's address all 3 of those things in one fell swoop. Here we go. All right, Mickey Fresh, here's what I think is a good starting place for a vocal using stock plugins in Logic. I start with the Distortion plugin, so let's address the question about the Distortion plugin right away. This is both substance and sizzle. What we're trying to do here, and it's subtle, but what we're trying to do, see, when you add distortion, I'm not looking for like guitar stomp box kind of distortion. What I'm looking for, distortion adds harmonics. And so what we're going to try and do is give the vocal, because it excites the upper harmonics, the harmonics above whatever the content is, it can give you a little bit of sizzle, and it can also make things feel just a bit more substantial because there's a bit more there. So I like to use the class AB Soft. We're going for subtle here, so put on some headphones maybe. And I'm going to play you, this is The Living. You can find this actual song on Spotify. So here's my vocal chain. I've got this distortion at the very top. I'm going to play you with and without.
We've been traveling through the ages, we've been growing in different stages.
So let's turn it on.
We've been traveling through the ages, we've been growing in different stages.
Hear how you get a bit of a lift?
But somehow we can't seem to meet up.
So more drive is going to get you a bit more sizzle, but of course it potentially gets to a place where the vocal actually does start to sound distorted. We're not looking for that. What we're looking for is when you turn it off, you feel like something goes missing. When you turn it on, it feels like you get a bit of a lift in dimension and size. So let's turn it up.
We've been traveling through the ages, we've been...
So that's what it's doing. We just want to have that sort of folded in a little bit.
We've been traveling through the ages, we've been growing in different stages.
Out.
But somehow we can't seem to meet up.
I know there's a little click happening when it comes in and out, but that's the idea. So this is an element of a modern vocal chain that I think is suitable to add, because old gear, vintage gear that we talk about all the time, this is one of the things that I think we didn't actually always realize how much of this was going on. And this is what makes things feel bigger and smoother and more substantial. And even though it's adding that crispness, it does it in a way where we're not EQing it in. So if you blend that in, you'll get that thing you're looking for without making the vocal harsh. The next thing I do is I compress a little bit. So we're just trying to get it to be evened out some.
We've been traveling through the ages, we've been growing in different stages.
So in Logic, all of these different things behave differently. You can try and leave your settings and just listen to what you think suits the vocal. A vintage opto is going to be smoother.
We've been traveling through the ages, we've been growing in different stages.
So I'm choosing these vintage ones because they actually do add a bit more of that harmonic content that I'm talking about. A vintage FET or a vintage VCA will do some sort of similar things. The ones that say studio, they're a bit cleaner. I'm going to go through a progression of trying to get a little bit of harmonic content in the vocal just to get it to feel a bit more substantial. Channel EQ. I'll put a link up to the video here where I talk about this EQ and how I sort of arrived at this general sort of idea. But what we're trying to do here is just take some of the mids out that we don't love, take some of the bottom off that we don't need, and then do any little corrections that you might find. So in this case, 280, I'll just turn it on and off.
We've been traveling through the ages, we've been growing in different stages.
Feels a bit heavy and boggy.
But somehow we can't seem to meet up.
Kind of cleans it up. And then, so you got to go looking for that, but 280, 250, it's probably where that's going to live. And then I do a multipressor. And this is actually where I'm doing the tonal shaping. So let's have a look at what's going on here.
We've been traveling through the ages, we've been growing in different stages.
So I put crossovers at 100, 1000, and 10,000. And what I'm doing here is I'm just moving the thresholds up and down until I get the tonal shape. So think of this as the girth and the size. So the 100 to 1000, so it's sort of like the substance of the vocal. And then the 1K to 10K is like the engagement, but it's also the harshness. So we'll just play with that.
We've been traveling through the ages, we've been growing in different stages.
See how that comes forward, but it's a bit harsh?
But somehow
warmer.
We can't seem to meet up.
Back this off.
We've got our own stories and they all end in a blaze
Heavier.
of glory.
Let's pull it down.
With the sky on fire and everybody all turned up, yeah.
Because it's reacting to the content, the tonal shape tends to stay a bit more consistent. So in this context, what I just did makes the vocal sound a bit small, but if you were doing a rap and you really need the vocal to cut through, bringing this area down a little bit, you can decide on how big you want the vocal to be, but you can also get it to cut through because you end up with a bit more of this than this. So the yin and yang of this area, the 100 to 1000 versus the 1K to 10K, tends to be like how edgy the vocal is. I chop this stuff in the bottom like way down, and then I try and leave the top open so that we get a brighter, more open sound. It sounds more expensive that way. And then the last question was about the CLA vocals, and this is actually a part of what Jason Joshua does. That's where I got this idea. So if we take this out, you're just going to notice a subtle lift. This is doing three things. It's adding a little bit of bottom end, but not bottom. It says sub, but it's not really like sub, woofer sub. And then I select between bite and top, and I just add like 1 or 2.
We've been traveling through the ages, we've been growing in different stages.
So let's wake the vocal up.
But somehow we can't seem to meet up.
We change it to top.
We've got our own stories and they all end in a blaze of glory.
So it's subtle, but to me the top is a bit more open and airy, and the bite a bit more aggressive. This is the kind of compression. So this is in parallel. And what that means is the original vocal is passing through, and this fader here is adding the parallel compression to the signal. The idea is that you get the best of both worlds. You get the dynamic in the original performance, and you get a little bit of the compressed vocal, which will make it feel firmer and closer. But if you hit that too hard, it can sort of suck the life out of the dynamic and the feeling of the vocal. So in this kind of thing, like push is probably appropriate. But if I was doing a rap vocal, I might do spank. And what that's going to do is just make a much firmer, compressed version of the vocal, and then add that in. I'll just show you what that sounds like, and you're going to hear it like jump way forward. But in this context, it's probably too much.
We've been traveling through the ages, we've been growing in different stages.
Let's go to spank.
But somehow we can't seem to meet up.
We'll do wall.
We've got our own stories and they all end in a blaze of glory.
So context, like musical context matters. So to me, when I hit wall in this, it feels like he's yelling at me. And that's not the vibe that we're going for with this song. So the effects in here, why am I not using them? They're actually really, really good. But the reason is because I want to be able to deal with them differently. So let's turn on the delay and use that as an example. So let's pour on a lot so you can hear it. And I'm just going to, if you click this button, you can link both halves, so whatever you do on one side happens on the other side. You may or may not want that depending on what you're doing. But let's just show you. So I've got let's put the delay on.
We've been traveling through the ages, we've been growing in different stages.
So it would probably come up like this. But what I want to be able to do with delays a lot, and this is why I'm doing it outside of the plugin, is I want the delay to be much smaller, in other words, not full range. Now I could put an EQ on here, but this has an EQ built in. So if we do something like this, listen carefully to the delay.
We've been traveling through the ages, we've been growing in different stages. But somehow we can't seem to meet up.
See how the character changes? Pretty bright.
We've got our own stories and they all end in a blaze of glory.
Let's move it down into the mids.
With the sky on fire and everybody all turned up, yeah.
So that can get it out of the way of other things in the track, the other instrumentation. It's contextual, but generally people tend to cut a lot of bottom out and some top, and that way it just sort of lives in the fabric. And lots of times you want the delay to be almost felt and not heard too much. Again, context. So that's my run through of what I feel is like the beginning of a modern vocal chain. I think you can get a really compelling sound with all of these tools. Would I use this in every case? Truthfully, it can change a lot, but this is sort of a foundational starting place or a thought process that I would use. I hope that helps. If you think stuff like this is kind of cool, I'd love to have you along for the conversation. If you have a question, put it in the comments. I'll do my best to answer it. And if you're so inclined, hit that subscribe button. We'll talk about things a little bit more. Oh, and the lava lamp, I might just take the rest of the day off.